Good afternoon. We're back with another episode of the Lord of the Rings LCG Progression Series, and today is a card review of Under the Ash Mountains, the fourth adventure pack of the Vengeance of Mordor card cycle. So let's take a look. The hero for this adventure pack is Gildor Inglorian. Leadership version 9. Well, he doesn't have another hero version. He's got an ally version, which is pretty good. It's 9. This hero is 9 threat, 3/2/1, 3 health. 3 willpower is very good for a leadership hero. Among leadership heroes, and 9 threat is quite good as well. There aren't that many. Leadership heroes tend to run a little higher in threat. In fact, I think the lowest is Frodo Baggins at 7. But apart from him, there's only a couple of 8s, and then everybody else is higher. And there's only, I think this is the 3rd or 4th leadership hero. There's Thorin, Oakenshield, Sam, and Celeborn, who are 3 willpower from the leadership sphere. So this is the 4th, I think. Still, he's not fulfilling a primary role yet, so let's take a look at his ability. Action: pay 1 resource from Gildor Inglorian's resource pool to choose a player to draw 1 card once per round. That's quite a good ability. So this hero is presenting himself as giving you access to leadership for resources. He's a pretty good quester, but not an elite quester. He's not going to be doing much battling or shielding, but he can draw cards, and that's good. This is a very, very strong hero for that reason alone. His ability to reliably draw cards. I like this hero a lot. The 4 categories I look for in elite heroes. Number 1, generates resources. Number 2, draws cards. Number 3, battles for 4. Number 4, shields for 4. And Gildor is a card drawer, and compared to other card draw heroes, he is quite good. He holds up quite well. He doesn't draw as many as Aristor or like Barivor, but he doesn't have to exhaust to do it. And he doesn't have Aristor's limitation of discarding your hand at the end of the round. I would rank him as better than Arwen at drawing cards, because Arwen needs Elven Light to do it reliably. Though she does generate resources, and Gildor loses them. I would consider Arwen and Gildor roughly equivalent if they were in the same sphere, but Gildor is better by virtue of being in leadership and giving access to the strong resource generating leadership cards. That's my opinion. Gildor is very strong. This hero is very, very strong. Worthy of inclusion in a deck designed to beat the hardest quests in the game, except for the fact that he's an ally in one of them and wouldn't be playable. But other than that, he's an ally in one of the quests, and so you wouldn't be able to play this hero in that quest. But other than that, he's a very, very strong hero. I like him a lot. Well worth getting this adventure pack for. Wandering Exile, 3 cost, 2/2/02. It's Noldor. After Wandering Exile commits to the quest, discard a card from your hand to ready Wandering Exile. Okay. It's a little understated for the cost, but it's attempting to make up for it with this ability. So the Wandering Exile would be part of Gildor's party when they encountered Frodo in Fellowship of the Ring, I suppose. Is the ability to discard a card to ready Wandering Exile after committing to the quest worth this card being understated? In a Noldor deck, yeah, for sure, because you get cost reduction. This is a very good card in a Noldor deck. Very, very good. Auto include for me in a Noldor deck. Outside of a Noldor deck, I don't consider discarding a card to ready a hero to be worth 1 resource, because 2 cost for 2/2/02 stats would be good. So the question is it worth paying 1 resource to give this card the ability to discard a card to ready Wandering Exile? And the answer for me is no, except in a deck that's designed to discard cards. And a Noldor deck is. So this card has some synergy with that concept in Noldor decks. But outside of a Noldor deck, I wouldn't pay 1 resource for that ability. Because often you wouldn't use it. It costs 2 resources for Unexpected Courage, which is the ability to ready an ally, or ready a hero, once per round, with no additional restrictions. Discarding a card from your hand is a very, very high cost to pay when all the cards in your hand are things you want to play. It's not a high cost to pay when you have something extra. So sometimes this ability is valuable, and sometimes it's not. And would I pay 1 resource for an ability that's sometimes useful and sometimes not? Maybe. Depends on the deck, really. Depends on how many duplicates you're running. If you're running a lot of duplicates and you need a card that will give you a way to make use of them, Glorfindel ally version is a good option. Wandering Exile is not a bad option if you need something to do with your extra cards. It's not bad. It's not exceptional though, except in the Noldor deck I think it's very good. Valiant Sword, attached to 1 cost, attached to a noble hero, 1 per hero. Attached hero gets +1 attack, +2 if your threat is 40 or higher. So it's Valor synergy. It could be used in a 3 Hunters deck as well, as it's restricted. If you have a noble hero and only costs 1, it would be free with that card if you're playing it as the first restricted attachment of the round. It's okay. I still don't see Valor as something that I'm going to take a look at seriously. I think outside of the 3 Hunters deck, I probably wouldn't play this card. And the 3 Hunters deck is a fun thematic deck, but not a good one for me right now. So I'd say this card is a fun thematic card, but not a very good one. Stone of Illusterian, probably pronouncing that terribly. 1 cost, guarded, attached to a hero. Attached hero gets +2 willpower. You draw 1 additional card during the resource phase. That's very strong. But it has the same caveat as every other guarded card. It is guarded by a location, though. Being guarded by a location is at least tempting, because this card is very strong. It gives card draw. And guarded by a location is not as bad as guarded by a location or an enemy or just an enemy. When a card comes off of the encounter deck, I'm almost always happier to see a location than I am to see an enemy. You often can't take an additional enemy during the early part of the game as a true solo player, but a lot of the time you can take an additional location if you're starting out with strong willpower. So there are decks where this card will make sense, possibly even be good. Now, in the encounter deck or the nightmare decks, the locations tend to be really nasty. So I don't think this is an elite card because it gets worse in the harder difficulty quests. But I think it'd be a pretty good card actually in a lot of encounter decks when you're playing on normal difficulty. Well preserved. 1 cost, attached to the hero with the 1 ring. So it's our lore master card. We've already seen the leadership, spirit, and tactics ones, and they've all been pretty good. So let's take a look. Limit 1 per hero. Attached hero gets +1 hit point. At the beginning of the round, exhaust the 1 ring and raise your threat by 1 to heal all damage from attached hero. This would be phenomenal on Treebeard if we could play restricted attachments on him, but we can't. So what heroes could take full advantage of healing every round? Because you don't always need to do that. I would think this would be best on a hero that has some positive effect from damaging itself, but apart from Treebeard, none come to mind. This is the most niche of the master cards, I think. You don't really design decks where your hero is going to be taking a lot of damage. You may design decks for strength and courage, which deal a lot of damage. You may design decks which have a lot of willpower for power of command. You may design decks that have a lot of shielding ability with inner strength. You don't typically design decks where your hero is going to take a lot of damage outside the Treebeard deck, and this can't go on Treebeard. So I think this is the most niche of the cards and probably going to be the least played of all of them. Certainly not one you can design a deck around like the others. A little disappointing for the lore sphere for this master card. It's okay. If you need healing, it's pretty good. If you're going to need frequent healing on a hero, but that doesn't happen too often because usually you don't design decks that way. And I don't think this card changes that. Northern Bowmaster, 1 cost 0201. So Dunedain Ranger, you cannot play Northern Bowmaster from your hand unless you are engaged with an enemy, but if you are engaged with an enemy, he's pretty good for his cost. It doesn't scale up well, most of the 1 cost and allies don't, but early in the game, if you're engaged with an enemy, he's good. Can you set that up, engaged with an enemy early in the game so you can play him on turn round 2, let's say? Can't play it round 1, but let's say round 2. Probably not reliably, even in the Dunedain deck, because you don't always guarantee that an enemy is even going to come out of the deck on phase 1 or round 1. So this Northern Bowmaster may just sit in your hand, waiting for you to set this condition up and be a useless card early in the game. But if you can set it up, it's not bad. It doesn't elevate the Dunedain synergy. I don't know if I would even include it in every Dunedain deck. It's going to be pretty inconsistent, and in a deck that's already not elite or maybe a little inconsistent already because you need to set up the being engaged with enemies condition to take advantage of a lot of the cards. If you're going to add one more card that is that way, you're just adding more inconsistency to the deck, where the Dunedain really wants to add less inconsistency to the deck. So I don't know if this would make it into Dunedain deck or not. And the Dunedain deck is a fun thematic deck, but not a good one. So this card seems similar, somewhat similar at least, to the Valiant Sword, in that they're both cards that are okay cards, maybe, in weaker decks, in, well, thematic decks. But, you know, probably not going to see a lot of play, even in the deck they're intended for. I don't know that I've really seen a good or even a functional Valor deck. It probably exists, though. But Dunedain decks have seen ones that are okay, but they do suffer from inconsistencies, and the Northern Bowmaster is not going to help that. Reckless Attack, 0 cost, doomed 2. Each player deals 2 damage to an enemy engaged with him. Well, you could play it with Saruman if you got access to the tactics sphere. Each player deals 2 damage to an enemy engaged with him, so 0 cost for 2 damage and doom 2. It's okay. It needs something extra to be playable, I think. I wouldn't play this outside of the Saruman deck. Even in the Saruman deck, it might not make the cut. Just for a one-time effect, it's not very powerful. In an elite deck, I really want a lot of power for my one-time effects. This certainly isn't that. In the Saruman deck, it would also ready him. And you could eliminate the Doom 2 cost. Even with that, I don't know that I would play it. It's just a card slot that could be better spent somewhere else, usually. I'm not sure which thematic deck this would go in. I guess the Saruman one, right? But other than that, I don't think this card will see much play. Odo Proud Foot, 2 cost, 1/1/1, 2 health. After Odo Proud Foot enters play, search the top 5 cards of your deck for a Hobbit ally and add it to your hand. Shuffle the other cards back into your deck. Well, I'd play it in a Hobbit deck. Helps you draw additional Hobbits. When you can draw, so let's say I would consider 1 cost for 1/1/1 a good card. So is his effect worth 1 cost? Is it worth it to pay 1 to draw a card? A specific card? Well, with Gildor and Glorian, we're paying 1 card to draw a card. So, yeah, I'd say it is without needing to... I wouldn't play a card where it's 1 cost, draw 1 card, but is that effect worth 1 resource on an already existing card? Yeah, it is. But it's not good when you don't draw a Hobbit ally, so to play this in a Hobbit deck you need to have a reasonable chance of drawing a Hobbit ally. When you do, it's well worth it. When you don't, it's sad. But that's consistent with a thematic deck. One of the reasons thematic decks tend to not be very good is that they're inconsistent. Sometimes it's because they're underpowered, but often because it's because they're inconsistent. So this design is consistent for a thematic deck, where it's sometimes not going to do anything or sometimes be very good. Which, when a deck is designed that way, it'll be capable of defeating a quest, some even difficult quests, but frustrating because you need a lot of things to go your way in order to make that happen. Defiant Challenge, Doom 2, each player may ready a character he controls. Okay, so it's another card for the Saruman deck. I wouldn't play this outside of a Saruman deck, especially not in true solo. 0 cost Doom 2 to ready a character is... Well, we already have Cram, which can ready a hero for no Doom cost. So why would you ever play this card when you have Cram? Unless you're playing this in addition to Cram, and that's a lot of cards spent on readying characters. There are better ways to do that, permanent ways, like Unexpected Courage. The only reason I can see playing this card is in the Saruman deck, because you can ready a character and also ready Saruman. And you don't need access to Spirit in order to do it. But outside of Saruman deck, there are other ways to accomplish this effect that are better. Helm of Secrecy, 4 cost, neutral card, limit 1 per deck. Interesting. Choose a hero you control and discard all tokens from it. Select a different non-Fellowship, non-Baggins hero from your collection with a threat cost less than or equal to the chosen hero, and swap those heroes, moving all eligible attachments and damage tokens to the hero from your collection. That is a really interesting card. That's really, really good. That you can build. That's going to go into every elite deck from now until the end of time, I think. I don't know, maybe players won't like it, but I think that's really, really good. That kind of flexibility, and that kind of, it's a very, very high skill ceiling card. Because there are a lot of heroes in the game that are useful in a specific situation, but not always useful. If you know the card text of every hero in the game and you can recognize the situation and think, oh, this hero would be very good in this situation, you'll increase the playability and power of this deck. Even if you know just a few characters, a few heroes in your collection, and you can think about how this card could be best used in each situation, it'd be good. And it also increases in power the more heroes you have in your collection. That's kind of insidious. But for really hardcore players focused on defeating the hardest quests in the game and nightmare difficulty, I mean, this expansion I would already recommend for Gildor. Now it's like, okay, this you must buy if you're a really serious player, in my opinion. Helm of Secrecy and Gildor. Helm of Secrecy is an amazing card. Probably worth playing Master of the Forge to help you get it out. I mean, this is really, really, really strong, really versatile, really high skill ceiling, meaning it scales up in its effectiveness the greater your skill is. There are too many things you could do with this card to count. It's very, very good. But just off the top of my head, one example would be using Éowyn for her once per game ability, and then swapping her out for another 9 threat hero. would be phenomenal, who has an ability that's more useful. Very, very good card. That alone would be worth buying the adventure pack for. Either that card or Gildor would be, if you're a really dedicated to defeating the hardest quest in the game. Council of the Wise is the contract for this one. You cannot include more than one copy of a card by title in your deck. Now they're staying consistent with the hardcore restrictions for these contracts. After you play an event from your hand, choose one, reduce your threat by 1, draw 1 card, or add 1 resource to your hero's resource pool. You can only choose each option once per round. It's going to be very difficult to design a reliable deck in which you can only include 1 copy of a card in your deck. You're going to have 50 different cards. You're going to have no clue which way the game is going to go, and that's going to make it very hard to design a deck to overcome any specific challenge. Because a lot of times, challenges that encounter decks present require you to build a deck that's focused around a couple of cards or a card combo. You're not going to be able to reliably get those combos when you can only play 1 of each card. So there's only a limited number of quests that this contract will work against. Going to be very, very difficult to design a reliable deck around it. If you can, the effect is okay, but I don't know why they included the restriction of you can only do it once per round. Is there some kind of recursive combo? There probably is, right? There's probably some kind of recursive combo, meaning repeatable combo that you could do over and over with some event. So they had to include that to prevent abusing it. Oh, Rumor from the Earth would be the recursive combo. Look at the top card of the encounter deck, then you may pay 1 lower resource to return Rumor from the Earth to your hand. So you could draw as many cards as you have lower resources, or reduce as much threat as you have lower resources, or yeah. So they included a restriction that you can't do that. This is a very niche contract at best. Yet another thematic contract. Primarily thematic. Because it's hard to build any kind of deck that you can rely on. And with a lot of challenges that the encounter decks present, you need to be able to rely on some combo in your deck in order to defeat it. But there are some quests that are more generalized and that Council of the Wise would work against, and perhaps be fun to play against. It would be fun to play this against quests that are more generalized, don't require anything specific. However, Helm of Secrecy and Gildor make this well worth the price of admission. It is one of the strongest adventure packs, in my opinion, for those 2 cards. So, thanks for watching.